Hi, my name's Amelie Abass, and I'm here in Redhill interviewing 3 Green councillors on behalf of Make Votes Matter. Make Votes Matter is a single issue cross party campaign for proportional representation in the UK. Hi, I'm here with Victoria Chester representing Hawley East and Salfords. Hi, Victoria.
Hello.
Some people say that a government with such a clear majority of MPs from one party, like the one we have right now, is the best way to create real and meaningful change. Would you agree with that?
I would say that having a majority in of itself isn't a problem, but having such a huge majority, one using an archaic and unrepresentative voting system, is a problem. You can't enact a meaningful change if you're not genuinely representing the general population. Change needs to take into account all viewpoints, and at the minute, it just isn't doing that.
Hi, I'm here with Neha Boghani, representing Hawley East and Salfords. Hi, Neha.
Hi.
How dramatic will the change be with proportional representation in the House of Commons? Will it just change the way politics looks, or will the effect be more far-reaching?
Right. So far in the UK history, in the politics, you have seen we have FPTP, and you have seen the
And what is FPTP?
first past the post.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have seen two major parties, Labour or Conservative. If we come with the proportionate representative, which means in a short form I say PR, right now Labour and Conservative are are winning their seats maybe less than 50%, but with the small parties like Green Party, SNP, Reform, their voice is not being heard.
I'm here with Jonathan Essex, councillor representing Redhill East. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi there.
What is the biggest threat to humanity that you think proportional representations can give MPs the opportunity to tackle?
Well, I think the biggest issues that need to be challenged today are the issues of growing inequality and climate change. But I think the way in which proportional representation can help challenge that is by giving people hope. I think the current politics separates politicians from people in a way that political parties hold the power and quite often put out messages which create distance between politicians and people and create fear. Whereas I think what we need to do is we need to have a true democracy that deepens people's relationships with decision making. And I think with that allows real change. But I think that is the hope that provides that's really going to make the change.
Do you think that people should focus less on where political allegiances lie and more on the manifesto?
Yes, I think that we desperately need to enable a more positive and productive approach to politics for everybody.
Yeah.
And we're mired currently in fake news, propaganda, partisan bickering, which distracts and detracts very much from the important stuff like policy. And you end up with people voting for a person or a party with really no concept of what they're actually voting for. And anything that reduces the least worst option style of voting is a winner for me. First past the post forces people to vote tactically, which to me seems to undermine the entire principle of democracy, of freedom of choice, of having your voice heard. We have a sort of double misrepresentation currently. We know that the results, the outcomes don't reflect accurately how people did vote, but they also don't reflect how people wanted to vote, how people would have voted if they thought the system worked. And it all becomes horribly negative, much more about keeping the person that you don't want to win out, as opposed to making a positive choice about who you do want to vote for. And as a result of that, we have no idea truly about what the public and society honestly believe.
Yeah.
How many people would make a different choice, would vote differently if they thought the system was fair, and if they truly thought that their vote mattered?
How do you think that certain religious and ethnic communities have been affected by the current first past the post system?
Amelia, thank you. Just to give a little introduction or a background of myself, I'm a Hindu and I represent even a Asian community in the Surrey area. Now, first past the post, what happened if, like, some minority representative is standing in the area, like, where that minority is a majority, then they get a chance to win it. But it's not true for everywhere. If you look at a certain community, Muslim community in a Bedford and Birmingham area, chances for them winning over there is much higher than Hindu, Sikh, and other community. They are, like, pretty much diluted all over nationwide, and under first past the post they do not get that chance to, like, or their voice is heard. But if we have a proportionate representation, that community or those minority community, their voices can be heard.
Do you think the current electoral system prioritizes a specific party victory over enacting real change, and how?
Yes, I really do think that is the case, and I think it for two different reasons. Firstly, I think we look at the last two general elections in the UK, it's favoured the two largest parties above all else. It's favoured the Conservative Party and Labour. So in 2019, Boris Johnson was elected with 44% of the vote, 37% of the people registered to vote, but that gave him 100% of the power. Then we have 5 years later, the Labour Party won a landslide victory, but actually got less votes than they got 5 years earlier. So the trading of those votes between those two parties in certain locations dictated the result. And I think what that has done is let people become further away from actually the results of the elections. It's more determined by money and political activists. And what that's let in is the politics of money, where companies, where those with high amounts of influence can almost dictate the policies that appear in the mainstream party manifestos. And it feels that sometimes that politicians that are going to be elected get lobbied heavily to do certain things, and then the status quo continues. So the mantle has been handed over from the Conservatives to Labour, the Conservatives to Labour, and although on some issues they are remarkably different, on other issues they seem remarkably similar to each other.
How could proportional representation encourage more people to actually look at the manifestos rather than just voting for one side of the political spectrum or another?
Yes, carries on a little bit from the previous point. We've become so divided and divisive, and it's become all about battlegrounds and battle lines, and not about policy. And
more about collaboration.
We're not used to collaboration. And I think people are sick of the fighting. People want grassroots politics, they want community politics, they want collaboration. And people are starting to understand that something like proportional representation would enable, facilitate that. It would mean that we'd have to work together. And so there'll be less of an inclination to make enemies at the outset, because you're going to have to work with these people later.
And rely on just one party to sort everything out.
Yeah,
exactly.
So people can therefore think, okay, what do I really believe in terms of policy? What do I want to vote for in terms of actually actions on the ground, as opposed to that person or that person? And that can only be a good thing, I think.
And would you say that a coalition government will increase the trust from members of the public?
Definitely. Politics is all about trust, and you have seen in recent years public has lost their trust in politics. Now, if we have proportionate representation, if we bring it, we will see the increase of people's trust in that. How? One is a better representation. As I said, if we have a proportionate representation, then we do not have a control of only majority two parties, but the other party's voice will be heard. So better representation is that it will have, like, we can have like a reduction in a stronghold of one party's decision. It will be a coalition decision will be there, and that's what people needed. And that's where, like, no tactical voting, and the more people's vote will be heard. Like, people will come forward and see, yes, like, their voice is being heard.
And finally, do you think that a safe seat is really indicative of a democracy, and why?
No, I would say the reverse. I would say a safe seat risks the person being elected being determined by internal party selections rather than by the views of the persons who get to vote for that person in a constituency, in a local area.
Yeah.
I think what a safe seat leads to is tactical voting. On the one hand, people vote to keep that party in power, maybe even more than that person in power. And outside of that, everyone is voting to see who they think has got the best chance of beating that person who has a safe seat, which leads to tactical voting. What we need to do is to have a situation where every single vote counts, and a vote that's made positively in a hopeful way is going to strengthen the connections between people and their elected representatives. And I think that is key to a healthy democracy.
Wow. Thank you so much for talking to me, Jonathan. If you like what you heard here today and you want to join the mission for proportional representation, just search Make Votes Matter.
Hi, we are 3 Green councillors and we support Make Votes Matter.